They were preparing for threats from the sky, from snipers, from cyber attacks. A web of steel was woven over the city. The Global Economic Summit would bring together the 20 most powerful leaders on the planet, and security was at a level of paranoia. Special ops on the rooftops, helicopters in the air, and in the digital realm. The Army's cybersecurity experts were hunting invisible enemies. Every possibility had been calculated, every scenario planned. They never thought the threat would come from beneath their feet, from the forgotten veins of the city. But down in the darkness, a city plumber on a routine blockage call found something that didn't belong. He tried to warn them, but no one would listen to a man in dirty overalls. They had no idea they had just dismissed a former Navy SEAL. Frank Gallo was a man in his mid-50s, with the lines of life etched onto his face. He woke up at 5 a.m. before his alarm, just as he had every day for the past 25 years. He used to wake up with the tension of a mission. Now it was with the pain of a chronic knee. As he drank his coffee in the kitchen, he watched the city slowly light up through the window. Today was Summit Day. To him, that just meant more traffic, more closed roads, and more headaches. When he arrived at the municipal depot, he overheard his younger colleagues joking about the summit security. "Hey, Frank," one of them said with a laugh. "Be careful in the tunnels today. Don't accidentally drop a world leader into the sewer." Frank just gave a tired smile in return. They didn't know. Frank knew those tunnels like the back of his hand. At 6 o'clock, as he got out of his city-issued truck on the main street next to the convention center, he could feel the tension in the air. All he wanted was to do his assigned job. Clear the blockage in the main sewer line running under the center, finish his shift, and go home. When he lifted the manhole cover, the daylight that streamed in met the damp, sharp smell rising from below. Frank prepared his equipment, turned on his headlamp, and descended into that familiar darkness. His knee, injured in a mission years ago, reminded itself with every step. But he was long accustomed to the pain. Down here was his office. The hum of the pipes, the echo of dripping water, and the sound of his own breath. When he reached the blockage at Tunnel 7, he noticed something strange. This wasn't a normal clog. The pile of mud and debris seemed to have been deliberately placed there, like a curtain made to hide something. When he struck it with his shovel, he heard a metallic sound. Curiously, he began to dig away at the pile. And then he saw it. A dull, non-corroding titanium cylinder. There were no writings, no symbols on it, but its surface was covered with faint acoustic panels. It didn't look like a bomb. It was something more sophisticated, more insidious. Frank slowly brought his hand close to the device. A low-frequency hum, almost imperceptible, penetrated his skin. In that moment, the plumber inside Frank Gallo disappeared, replaced by another man he thought he had left behind 20 years ago. His instincts, his training, everything he thought he had forgotten came rushing back. This wasn't a water meter. This wasn't a sensor. This was a weapon. When he surfaced, the sun blinded him. He immediately went to a young police officer guarding the perimeter. "Officer," he said, "there's a problem downstairs. I found a strange device in Tunnel 7 connected to the main line. The EOD team might need to take a look." The young officer gave Frank's dirty overalls and muddy boots a contemptuous look. "Look, buddy, I get that everyone's on edge today, but we can't send a team for every report of strange junk. It's probably just some old city equipment." "No, it's not," Frank insisted. "I've never seen anything like it before. It looks modern and it's humming." The officer finally reached for his radio. After a few short conversations, a more senior sergeant arrived. Frank explained the situation to him as well. The sergeant called a liaison officer at the summit's Security Coordination Center. Frank could only hear words like A plumber, a piece of metal. Yes, understood, not a priority, from the phone conversation. The sergeant hung up. Look, sir, the security team thinks this is not a threat, probably an old seismic sensor. Let's not interfere with their work. You clear the blockage and be on your way. The blood drained from Frank's veins. Not a priority? You don't even know what that thing is. Look, the sergeant said, his patience worn thin. The leaders of the world are here today. We're dealing with real threats. Not a piece of scrap metal you found. Now, get back to your job, or I'll have to detain you for breaching a security zone. For a moment, Frank felt like he would explode. He wanted to scream at them who he was, what that device could be, what that hum meant. But he remained silent. No one would believe him. He was just a plumber in dirty overalls now. Filled with anger and helplessness, he returned to his truck. But he wasn't going to give up. If they wouldn't listen, then he would do it his way. Frank couldn't sleep that night. His mind went back to the cold, dark waters of the Arabian Sea years ago. He was Petty Officer Frank Mole Gallo back then, in the Navy SEALs Underwater Demolition Team. His mission was to disable a new generation of acoustic sabotage device placed on the hull of a friendly nuclear submarine by enemy frogmen. That device, just like the one today, was humming quietly. The narrator continues, as Frank's past comes to life. Inside the dark, claustrophobic tube, he could only hear the sound of his own breathing. Next to him, the tech specialist, Sonar, was trying to analyze the frequency the device was emitting but couldn't make sense of it. This doesn't match anything we know, Mole. The data is inconsistent. Forget the data, Frank had replied. Tell me what it feels like. Frank reached for the device, magnetically attached to the submarine's massive hull. His equipment was limited. The device was designed to emit sound waves at a specific frequency to create microscopic fractures in the submarine's hull, causing it to implode catastrophically weeks later during its deepest dive. It wasn't a bomb, it was a whisper, the whisper of death. As Frank tried to disable it, he realized the enemy had set a secondary trap. The device detected his intervention and was about to emit a small but powerful shock wave. He only had time to push Sonar away. The blast destroyed the device but shattered Frank's knee. His team rescued him at the last moment, but that day was the end for Mole Gallo. He was declared a hero, received a medal, but was quietly given an honorable discharge. His commander told him, "We'll never find someone with instincts like yours again." He opened his eyes. He now knew what he had to do. The next morning, he went to the city's main archive office. He said he needed the main sewer schematics for a large project in a different district. No one suspected anything. The massive maps spread before him were a treasure. This was the circulatory system of the city's underworld. He combined his SEAL training in map reading and strategy with his practical knowledge as a plumber. He marked the location of the first device. Then he began to calculate which main lines its acoustic resonance could follow. It was like unraveling a spider's web. For the next 36 hours, Frank moved through the city's underbelly like a ghost. He did his normal job during the day and slipped into tunnels no one else entered at night. One night, as he was moving through Tunnel 4, he heard footsteps from above. A security patrol was approaching. Frank instantly slid into a narrow maintenance conduit and held his breath. As the beams of their flashlights swept the walls, he managed to remain unseen in the darkness. This moment reminded him of his old days, and once again hit him with the magnitude of the risk he was taking. By following the hum, he found 2 more devices placed at 2 key structural points beneath the convention center. One was attached to the main water pipe, the other to the gas line. He now understood the plan. When the summit began, a high-frequency test signal from the announcement system's speakers, used to check the audio before the president's speech, would trigger all three devices simultaneously. The combined resonance they would create would cripple the building's core infrastructure. Gas and water pipes would burst, starting a chaos of fire and flood. The goal wasn't to kill. The goal was to create an international incident, leaving the world's leaders helpless and in a panic in what was supposed to be the safest place on Earth, right before the eyes of the world. There were only a few hours left until the summit began. He didn't have the equipment to disable the devices himself. He had to convince the authorities. But this time, he wasn't going to a police officer. He was going straight to the commander. Using the tunnels, he easily bypassed the outermost security ring around the convention center. His target was the inner perimeter, where the Secret Service's mobile command center was located. From the maps, he found a manhole that led up right next to the command van. When he emerged, he found himself at the end of a dozen gun barrels. Agents had their weapons pointed at him. Frank slowly raised his hands. He didn't panic. "Agent Miller," he shouted. He had heard the lead agent's name on TV during the summit preparations. Agent Miller burst out of the van. "Who are you, and how did you get into this area? You have 10 seconds before you get shot." "My name is Frank Gallo. I'm a city plumber," Frank said calmly. "But that's not important. What's important is that there's a phase array acoustic resonator with a barium titanate core attached to the main water pipe right under the van you're sitting in. It's probably set to trigger on a high-frequency signal from the summit's PA system. There are 2 more. One on the gas line, the other in Tunnel 7. I'm giving you 3 minutes. Either you listen to me, or the summit starts with a disaster." Agent Miller was stunned. This man couldn't be just a plumber. The terminology he used, barium titanate core, phase array resonator. These were words from top-secret technology reports. "Send the team," Miller roared into his radio. "Get EOD underground. This man will guide them." The next hour was like a thriller movie. Frank led the bomb disposal team through paths only he knew to the devices. The EOD chief was initially skeptical of Frank. But when Frank said, "Be careful with the second one, it's placed too close to the gas pipe's pressure sensor. Standard procedure might rupture the pipe," the chief's expression changed. This was a detail that wasn't on their maps. From that moment on, every word from Frank was taken as a command. All 3 devices were successfully disabled just minutes before the summit began. The summit started. The leaders spoke. Deals were signed. The world never knew how close its leaders had come to disaster. That evening, Frank was packing his tools next to his municipal truck. Agent Miller approached him. "We don't know how to thank you for what you did today, Mr. Gallo." Miller asked, "But I don't understand. All our intelligence was clear." "How did you know?" Frank paused for a moment. "You guys scan the sky, Agent. I listen to the ground, and the ground always tells the truth." Miller offered him a job, a consultancy, a commendation. Frank politely refused them all. "Thanks, Agent, but I've already had a job like that. I'm just a plumber now." Miller looked at the man in the dirty overalls with a newfound respect. This man had saved not just a city today, but possibly prevented a world crisis. "Okay," Miller said, "but know this city owes you." Frank got into his truck and disappeared into the night. When he got home, he opened an old wooden box. Inside lay a tarnished Navy SEAL trident. He took the metal in his hand, looked at it for a moment, then closed the box again and put it back in the deepest corner of his closet. He knew that the city's true guardians weren't always in uniform or in high-tech command centers. Sometimes the greatest heroes were the ones working in the darkness below, listening to the secrets the city tells, ensuring the world above can sleep soundly.